What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Apex, the new survival action thriller film starring Charlize Theron and Taron Egerton. This film is from Netflix, out now from Icelandic director Baltzar Kormákur, probably best known for directing the Everest movie with Jason Clarke and Jake Gyllenhaal about 10 years ago. And yeah, I wanted to check out Apex just because stars Charlize Theron, right? I think whenever she's in any type of action movie, I think it's kind of an auto watch for me at this point. Of course, her esteemed background with, of course, Mad Max Fury Road, Atomic Blonde, people know the credits at this point of late, but it's been quieter for Charlize. And I think that also partially motivated me to check out a Netflix movie I previously knew nothing about. Apart from her doing, thankless work in Fast and Furious of late as Cypher, it's been a bit quieter for Charlize, and I think most notable of all has been her work on Netflix with the two Old Guard movies, and the Old Guard 2 from last year was incredibly poor. So her going back to something else, something more original, was welcome at the very least. And then Taron Egerton also, about a year and a half ago at this point, had a Netflix hit of his own with Carry On from Young Colette Serra opposite Jason Bateman. So I think the two of them together on a Netflix movie, it certainly, I think, crosses the threshold that most, released outside of award season Netflix movies fail to match, right? There's actually a bit of a hook, a bit of intrigue, with this movie. Netflix's survival thriller film Apex is passable in every sense. Does Apex give you Charlize Theron as a stoic adventurer running for her life in the Australian backcountry as she's pursued by a manic loner played by Taron Egerton? Yes. Did this film shoot on location in Australia and actually look pretty good in its outside locations? Also yes. Is the film's plot incredibly predictable? Is the script pretty poor? Is the dialogue nothing special? Also yes. But for a random Netflix movie without any hype coming out in the middle of the spring, I was broadly satisfied. I'm not mad that I watched it. The film does have some well-conceived action. I just wish it had a bit better characterization. Charlize is pretty quiet in this movie. It's really a film that doesn't have a ton of dialogue. Frankly, I wish Charlize Theron would get back to making movies on the big screen. I do think the film opens with a pretty cool set piece where we have Charlize Theron's Sasha climbing the troll wall, I believe it's called, in Norway, which is the largest, vertical rock face in all of Europe. Obviously a very expert climbing pursuit, and she's there with her experienced climbing guide. I don't know if they're close friends necessarily, played by Eric Bana. I think visually, effects wise, it does look pretty solid as them on this vertical face. And due to a climbing accident, after first pausing up the rock face in the hanging climbing tents, I forgot the term, they have to abandon ship and descend due to poor weather. And due to a climbing accident, partially due to Sasha's kind of dropping the ball, Eric Bana's character has to fall to his death, despite being really experienced. And then we jump forward, and that's really the last we see of Eric Bana in the movie. He is an Australian. This movie was filmed in Australia. You have to imagine that's how he came into the movie in a small role. Then from there, we move to several months later, and Sasha has this pursuit of going into the Australian backcountry by herself. This kind of kayaking, whitewater kayaking, type venture with some hiking as well. And she encounters some gruff characters at the gas station. She actually is greeted by someone who's a little more friendlier, Ben, played by Taron Egerton, who is a local, and he gives her some advice on the map of, if she's trying to take some risks and take a chance, she could go this route, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, the film is just kind of so obvious in its plotting, right? The people that were kind of giving her a hard time, these locals, are obviously not the true villains of the movie. And Ben, played by Taron Egerton, is actually the real villain, despite his, nice demeanor in the beginning, or his friendliness anyway. It's all pretty heavy-handed, or at least just kind of going through the motions at this point, where before we know it, Ben is in pursuit of Sasha, captures her at one point after fucking with her and taking her bag. He gives up the ghost pretty quick. There's not really much surprise or suspense that he is the bad guy, and there's a sequence of chasing, where he hunts her, and then The film gets a bit more depraved when we learn about Ben's true origins and him being the cause of disappearances in this area of this Australian national park. Pretty notable red herring with this beef jerky. I do think at this point there is a handful of like leaps in logic, particularly at the very end where they briefly team up to survive so they both can escape. Like, I didn't quite understand why Sasha didn't just kill Ben once he had, his leg broken. Why did she need to carry him up the mountain via climbing? Was she just afraid of the final confrontation? Because I'm not sure why she wouldn't just take him out and not risk having to free climb up the rest of the mountain alone after she drops him to his death. It was a weird plot point I didn't quite understand there. But again, like the fact that they actually film this outside and like we actually see a good amount of like kayaking on a river and stuff. Not all of it's actually real, but I think it looks pretty cool, watching them run through the woods. So again, like for like a baseline, like 2.5 star action thriller movie with some actors you recognize, again, it's passable, but like the script is nothing special. Again, Charlize, I wish she would get into some projects that are more interesting. And Taron Egerton, he definitely bears it all out there. He's pretty manic in this movie as he starts to expose his true character and stuff. Kind of a fun performance from him, if perhaps it's a little broad. The Charlize performance, it's pretty steely, it's pretty stoic because she doesn't have a lot of lines necessarily. This is not that dissimilar from what you do with the Old Guard, where again she's a pretty quiet and reserved person more often than not in the movie. It's whatever. We'll see how long it lasts on the Netflix top 10. I know it did get there over the weekend. Again, that's kind of a by default thing with new Netflix film releases. So we'll see how it performs. Broadly curious about that. But yeah, rooting for these people to make some better stuff in the future, but didn't hate it. Let me know though, what'd you think of Netflix's Apex film? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.